All right, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in for the final stream of the night. I appreciate everybody who's here. I know some of you have been here with me since 4 o'clock, and some of you are just jumping in. So thanks so much. Feel free to read in the chat. But today I am with Aron Raw, and we're kind of having a continuation of a conversation that we had on Skeptic Haven not long ago, whose link I'll post here in the description box after the stream, where we talked about basically physician-assisted death and whether or not it is considered pro-life to support that or not, and how currently people who consider themselves pro-life do not support the idea of somebody being able to terminate their life with the assistance of a physician, obviously, and how, to put it bluntly, how ridiculous that is. And if you're truly pro-life, shouldn't you support the idea of somebody being able to make their own autonomous decision on when they should end their life, or to appoint somebody they trust should they not be in the condition to make that decision themselves? And also, I found, since our last discussion, Aron, I found some really great points on common misconceptions related to the topic, and both in America and Canada, and basically debunking all of these common misconceptions. But before we dive into that, how are you doing? Who are you? What do you do? And you are you love this topic. It's an important topic to you, and I'd love to hear more about you and how it impacts you.
Yeah, well, I hesitate to say that I love the topic. It's a difficult one to say that you love, being, death.
Right.
It is one that I intend to. I'm going to be one of the featured speakers on the Free Thought Cruise of the Caribbean in a couple weeks, and I intend to give a speech on this very topic. And why would we want to talk about death? I'm going to try to make it as funny as I think it can be,
Right.
but not today. Today would just be a little bit more serious. By the way, for anybody, because it sometimes happens to people say, "Hey, what are you drinking?"
Yeah. What are you drinking?
Yeah, Goose Island, Bourbon County. I think it's an Imperial Stout. Oh, yeah.
From Chicago, Illinois.
From Chicago, Illinois. Yes, 14.6 ABV.
That's wild.
Yep, good stuff, and goes well on pancakes. So anyway, on the issue with death with dignity is, if you've noticed that the religious conservatives who praise so much about morality, right?
Right.
But the only kind of death that the Bible doesn't advocate for is the kinds of death that involve mercy.
Right.
Because the Bible is not merciful. It's torturous.
Right.
And so they don't want you to live if living is not suffering.
Right.
So there have been people like you. There's sometimes people who get a terrible diagnosis, and they're told that, hey, this is you may be relatively fine now. You just got a bit of a stomach ache or backache or whatever the problem is, but let me tell you what you're going to be facing.
Yes.
It's going to be debilitating. You're going to lose the ability to speak. You're going to lose the idea. You're going to become incontinent. You're going to become all these horrible things, and it's going to be an enormous, years-long drag that is going to be financially and emotionally costly. And this is how everyone in your family will remember you. Everything you've ever done or shared up to this point will be forgot. They're only going to remember the nightmare that begins now.
Right.
And we're not going to help you with that.
Right.
You're just going to have to live through that.
Right.
All of that emotional and financial damage for no fucking reason. We know that there's nothing we can do to stop this. And we could. And if we were moral, we would.
Right.
Get to a point where you have been as functional as you can be. And there's a point where you can say, hey, I don't want to, I'm done. I don't want this thing to get any worse. I've called in my family and friends. We're going to have one last drink together or whatever. And then just roll on way too much anesthetic.
Right. Right. But that's
the way to go out, isn't it?
That's inhumane, apparently. That shouldn't be allowed.
We had a dog. We had a boxer. My wife loves Molossers, but so she had this boxer. And when the boxer got cancer, I take it to the vet, and the vet is telling us, well, we can surgically remove this tumor or whatever, and we can prolong. And then she has to tell me that, but I think you're getting the wrong idea. We can't cure this.
Right.
This is what will kill your dog. There's no way around that. We can make it last a little longer, but the longer it lasts, the worse it's going to get. And so it was recommended that they roll on a little too much anesthetic.
Yes. Yes.
And for people, this is an important thing. If you ever have to put your dog down, I've heard from vets who say that there's a lot of parents that don't want. There's a lot of people who don't want to be in the room when that time comes.
Be in the room.
That's when your dog. That's when your dog needs you there the most.
Be in the room.
Vets say that when they're going to be putting a dog down, the dog is desperately looking for its people.
Right.
You've abandoned the dog in its moment of need.
Right.
So we had this boxer, and when the boxer's on the table and the vet is about to roll it on, she's just got this roller. She's going to roll it on, and she says, "It's time." And we all lean in and hug and pet until he just melts.
Right.
Don't abandon your dog like that.
No. And that's where people lose me, is I've never once heard anyone argue against putting your pets down early when they're sick or when they're ill. I have heard people say, I would hate to do that. That's sad. I can't imagine having to do that. I have heard people obviously not enjoy the thought, but I've never once heard somebody say you're a worse person for putting your dog out of its misery early. Everybody says, of course, like, why would I want my dog to suffer? And then the same argument towards people, and you're inhumane, you're terrible, you're promoting suicide, you're going to take advantage of people with disabilities. And I don't understand the cognitive dissonance there when they can see it for things they love, but they can't see it for things that aren't any of their business.
Yeah, this is a very painful topic, obviously. I mean,
right.
when we're all in there, the vet's going to roll on the anesthetic, and we're there. My wife loves the dog. I'm new to the dog. He's lived with me for a year or two. I didn't raise the dog from a puppy like she did, but and the vet just met that dog, the day before when it was planned that we were going to have to do this. So, but everybody in the room was crying.
Right.
And it's because we love the dog, and this is what needs to be. This is the merciful thing to do. What ends up with people, and it's especially bad when it's children.
Yes.
When you're told that, hey, the chemo, the third round, the second relapse, chemo's not even slowing it down anymore. So take your little bald kid, go to Kissimmee, Florida. See if you can get 1 or 2 good days. And then she's going to be angry and cranky and in pain.
Mm-hmm.
And she's going to be breathing more and more laboriously. And there's going to be a time when she's unconscious and isn't going to come back. There's going to be a time when she's never waking up again. But you got to listen to that breathing for a couple more days, as it's ever more laborious until it stops. You have kids?
I don't.
But you have pets.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
And I would never, ever let them drag through life at the end of their rope.
Having pets, just try to extrapolate that and exaggerate that to the point of, here's a person that is more valuable to you than you are.
Yep.
And the doctor is telling you to wait until she stops breathing.
Yep.
We put young mothers through that. The child has been in pain for days.
Mm-hmm.
Why couldn't we have Thursday? Why couldn't we have brought an end to this?
Right?
Yeah. No, because that would be immoral somehow.
Right. And it's this odd confusion with, so somebody says they're pro-life. They say everyone deserves to live, everyone deserves to have a life. I disagree. But at the same time, I say, okay, but do you truly think that that you're doing something morally profound by exactly what you just described? Do you think you're doing something morally profound by saying, I'm actually going to make you just suffer until you die naturally? I'm not, for example, I had a friend in college who had a debilitating disease. It was a degenerative disease. It was one of those very terrible ones where first you lose your ability to speak, then you lose your ability to walk, then you lose your ability to feed yourself, to take yourself to the bathroom, but it takes 5 or 6 years to get there. Every sibling in her family had it, and everyone was at a different stage of the disease. So she literally watched her older brothers go through exactly what she was about to go through, knowing exactly how long it would take, exactly what it would cost, exactly what she would be going through. And that to me says, why should someone like that not have the opportunity to say, I'm going to set a date in 2 years where I'm going to have a party. I'm going to say goodbye to everybody I've ever loved. And I'm not going to become that puddle of a human being in a wheelchair that can't even speak anymore when 5 years prior I was getting my undergraduate degree. That's how quickly this happens, but also how slowly this happens. And you know, based on watching your siblings go through that, exactly how it's going to go. There's not even a chance that you might be the one that gets out of having it. Why should somebody in that scenario not be able to say, I couldn't control the cards I was dealt upon birth, but I can control the cards I was dealt upon death, without somebody saying, no, your boxer deserves it, but you don't deserve it. Your hedgehog
Yeah.
deserves it, but you don't deserve it.
Yeah. The dog got death with dignity.
Yeah.
And it wasn't so much what my granddaughter had to go through, suffering a second relapse of leukemia. It's what my daughter had to go through as her mother,
Right.
being told that this is when she came down with leukemia the first time. I was babysitting, and I
Oh,
remember
no.
I've got the crib next to me, and I'm listening to her breathing, and the breathing is so heavy that I'm thinking any breath now is going to be the last, and it's just going to stop. That's just, I was freaking out about it, and I remember bringing it up to my daughter, and she said, yeah, she said that she's already been to the doctor. She's been to 2 or 3 doctors, and they keep telling her it's just a cold. And I'm like, no, I don't care. This is a situation, and the 3 doctors you've been to so far, well, we got an appointment next week. I'm like, honey, she's not going to live till next week.
Right.
So we took her down to the emergency room the next morning, and that's when they said it was leukemia, and that was and they said that she was on death's door then.
Wow.
That they
Is she
did the chemo and everything, and this was a 3-year ordeal. She would get healthy. They cure her. It's all good. We're all happy. Hey, modern science and medicine, blah blah blah. And then 8 months later, and it's back.
Is she still with us, or is she passed away?
My daughter had to go through the thing in Kissimmee, Florida, and then she had one good day. One.
Wow.
And then you come home and wait for days on that increasingly laborious breathing. And my daughter told me at one point over the phone, she said that she knows that she's asleep now, and she knows she's never going to wake up. She doesn't know how long she's going to keep breathing, but she knows she's never going to wake up again.
Wow.
Why would you put the mother through that?
Right.
Where is the morality? Where?
Right.
Where's the compassion? That's not moral.
Right. Right.
When my dad died, they told me that if he had time, I got an urgent call from my baby brother. It says, Dad's in a hospice. Get over here. And so we and several others, we jump into our cars and we drive out to this tiny little place you can't get to by airplane. He always lives in places where there's no airport, or the only way you can get there is by plane, meaning like a bush plane. That's
right.
It's just the kind of places he lived. And so we drive out there to see him, and his ex-wives are there in the same room, all
Wow.
to pay their respect. Who gets that?
I was going to say,
You know, the collection of ex-wives.
what a guy.
All
quite
his
the picture.
employees, his sons, all of that. You know, and we're all in the room, and he's lucid. And they were telling him things like, you know, well, we can promote your life. We can prolong your life indefinitely. We can put you in an iron lung. And my dad said, that ain't living.
No way.
Right?
Right.
Right.
Like,
Sure,
no
you haven't
thanks.
died, but the living part is all over with.
Right. Absolutely.
So he had the choice. He had the choice to keep living or die. And they couldn't give him a good option because they can't kill him. They tell him that he's going to be, that things are going to get progressively worse over the next few days, and that he will not be able to breathe, and that he will be going through so much stress, gasping for air, that's all through the room, but he can't process any of it, that he would be in severe physical stress and terror at not being able to breathe. Just imagine. And that they were going to have to put him on hallucinogenic drugs to deal with that enormous stress. So now you're stoned into psychosis while also being terrified. Talk about the ultimate bad trip.
Right. Absolutely.
My dad very much wanted death with dignity, to the point that he did not want anyone to see him under the effects of hallucinogenic drugs. When he thought the effects were, when he thought he could feel the effects, or when he thought that things didn't look right, he kicked us all out of the room. Would rather die alone under all that stress and face his terror on his own than to injure his image and our minds. That's respectable.
Right.
Yeah. He got a better death than most people. He got a better death than most people deserve.
Right.
You know, I mean, I wish that I could have a moment when everybody who ever loved me was in the room to say their goodbyes. Right. And the thing was, it was supposed to take days. And it didn't. It took hours. From him being able to speak and be lucid, his baritone voice with authority as he's giving commands and delegating this and that to everybody matter-of-factly the way he did, to dead after kicking us out of the room, 4 or 5 hours, maybe, not 3 or 4 days. And so it leaves me to wonder, if I were an attending physician, would I be moral enough to just roll on a little bit more than I needed to?
And how would that make you a worse person than the same exact procedure happening scheduled, a month prior, 2 months prior? Would that make you worse? Would that make you better? Would that make you the same? I got curious because I was thinking to myself, doing research, it appears, and I'm not attacking anyone, this is just facts, it appears to be that the majority of the people who vote against or speak out against death with dignity are conservative Republicans, at least in the United States. And so I started to think, I thought, what benefit do they gain? There has to be a benefit here. There's no reason that you would care so much about how somebody else decides to end their life if there wasn't some kind of benefit. It does not help the economy in any way to keep people alive. It's actually very, very expensive to keep people alive. So it's not saving any money. It's actually detrimentally expensive for most people, and especially for people that are on government assistance to be kept alive. So that's not it. It's not like it somehow saves money. It's not more expensive to euthanize. Which I hate using that word because they even describe how euthanization is different than what this is. The only thing that I can think is that many of the people who own or have the most stake in medications that are used during quote unquote life-saving methods that keep you alive even though you're not alive are also Republicans. They get a financial benefit, I think, from you taking these medications for a longer period of time. And it's just very interesting to me that that would kind of be where, like, the hill where they die on, because I found a page of falsehoods, and this is according to deathwithdignity.org, that people often misconstrue with being part of Death with Dignity, and they debunk them. Oh, that's an adorable dog. My parents have that same kind of dog.
Yeah, my wife is fostering. Okay, hold on.
I love an animal break.
Get back.
If anybody cares, my parents have that same dog, and his name is Hank, and he weighs 125 pounds.
All right. My apologies.
No, you're good. You're good.
Yeah, she's fostering dogs, and she brings out one. She brings out one that has already attacked 3 of our other dogs.
Oh.
So, yeah, we can't keep that one. So.
Oh no.
Yeah, it doesn't get along.
Yeah, no.
So
my parents have had a few of those.
Brings that dog out, and the other dog is is in the other room. I can lock them all in this room, but there's one already in the other room. But she already brought the other dog out while that one's still out there while I'm on camera. So I got to go get that dog and bring it in here. And then when I open the gate, they all flood out.
Well, so, we love pets.
While on camera.
Yeah. No, they can all be here. That's totally fine. I was just telling the audience, somebody brought up a good point that the money in hospice is astounding. But even though they just make it comfortable until somebody dies. So there's tons of money to be made also in long-term hospital care. So I actually found a page after we spoke last time from deathwithdignity.org, where they debunk a lot of the common misconceptions related to, they do not like the term assisted suicide, because that's not what it is. It's a medical procedure that you're having done. It just happens to assist you with end of life. But so the first falsehood is it's physician assisted suicide. And that's false. The truth is, the use of the term suicide when referring to death with dignity is offensive and inaccurate. Causes of suicide vary and are complex. Generally speaking, people who die by suicide would otherwise go on living if they had not ended their lives. By contrast, requesting and taking medication under death with dignity law results in the end of life of a life already in the process of ending. The objective is to not extend the span of an otherwise unsure, open-ended span of life. So I thought that was a pretty interesting detail there. They're like, these people, if you commit suicide, you were going to live if you didn't do that. If you choose death with dignity, you just choose the day you die. You don't choose whether you're dying or not. And then it's active euthanasia. That's another falsehood. Euthanasia refers to the act of deliberately causing the death of another person who may be suffering from an incurable disease or condition, commonly performed with a lethal injection. Euthanasia itself for humans is not legal anywhere in the United States. This is, again, a decision that's being made by a patient. Nobody's being euthanized like at a veterinarian where somebody else makes that decision for you. And I think their main argument, there's a lot more that we can get into, but their main argument is that it's entirely consensual the entire way. There's no chance for anyone who does not qualify, whether it's mentally, whether it's emotionally, whether it's, for example, if you are deemed unable to consent, you aren't allowed to participate, whether it's because you're unconscious, whether it's because they consider you, say, mentally ill. If you're considered mentally ill, you're not allowed to choose this. Or if they don't feel that what you are suffering with will 100% guaranteed to kill you, to be the thing that kills you, you don't qualify. So we're not just calling up the doctors and saying, I just want to die and I want to make it legal. You have to take tests, you have to be examined, you have to pass certain qualifications mentally, emotionally, physically, in order to even qualify to be found mentally sound to put an expiration date on yourself.
I think it's funny that suicide is illegal, and a strange, ironic, and yet a simultaneously appropriate punishment is that you get a life sentence.
You do. Yeah, you do. You absolutely do. That's a great point.
See,
So
I'm not.
no,
I'm not actually. I'm not actually advocating for suicide.
no, not
I
at
mean,
all.
yeah, most of the conditions for suicide are not something that I could get behind. There are moments that I can see, yeah, where it suddenly makes sense. When you lay
Yeah,
down your life for someone else, for example, when you know this is going to kill you, but it'll save, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few or the one, whatever. There
right.
are those moments of altruism and all that. But on the whole, in general, I don't advocate for suicide, nor have I even
No,
considered it. No, really, seriously, nor have I even considered it.
right.
I haven't always had things really good
Hmm.
in my life, but in my worst times, I always knew that, hey, I could just step out on the freeway and stick my thumb out and begin a new chapter of life,
Yes,
and it'd be completely different.
right.
So your mileage may vary.
Right, right. And I think that's the main thing is that people seem to think, or they want you to think when they're advocating against this, that you're promoting suicide. And that's not the case at all. Very much like they brought up on deathwithdignity.org, suicide implies that you would otherwise live if you didn't kill yourself. You would otherwise live
Yeah.
a seemingly normal life, as opposed to, we are telling you right now you're going to die, but we're also not giving you the chance to uh, take away any of your own suffering at any point.
we're not we're
Right,
not just going to tell you that you're going to die. We're also telling you that you have already stopped living.
right.
And there's this huge overlap where shit's just going to get worse, and we could stop it.
We
We
could.
don't have to take away all of your money. We don't have to ruin all of your family's memory of you. Let your grandchildren remember you with a smile.
Yep,
That would be nice.
yep. Or at least being able to remember their names. That would also be nice. I love it. No, I love the dogs. Dogs are always allowed to interject. They seem to be very interested in the topic as well. They have opinions. What is the big white dog's name?
Falcor
Falcor. That's adorable. My
from
parents have
the
that
Never
same
Ending
breed.
Story.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a Great Pyrenees. His name is Falcor because he can fly. Can't you? So I've had to build my fence up 8 feet high with
Yes.
rollers across the top because he was constantly escaping.
Yep.
And he'll come back.
Yeah.
He's the
Yeah.
most loyal dog I've ever seen. He's absolutely amazing for his loyalty.
Yeah.
He's everywhere I try to go in the house, he's in the way.
Yes.
Every time I sit down to eat, he's at my feet. I go to
Yes.
bed, he's right there. He's under the bed. Or if my wife isn't in bed, then he's in bed with us.
Yes.
There were times when he would try to be in bed with both of us, but he's too freaking big.
Yes. Yep. Yep. We have a dog, Godzilla, same way. She's in the bed. She's underfoot. She interrupted my last stream snoring because she sounds like a tractor. I've had people think that I snuck people in overnight. They're like, how'd that guy get out? And it was just her. It was just her snoring. It was no guy. But wait, sorry. I thought she was just snoring. But to an end, I guess something that people should understand is it's not the advocation for suicide. If advocation is a word, I'm not sure if that's a word. I'm making it one. It's the idea that, like anything else, I live in Tennessee. Everybody has those plates that say "Don't tread on me," which is ironic because they paid the government for those plates. But that's like a whole other thing. But like, if you truly don't want people to tread on you, why not also have the opportunity to choose when you die? That's what I don't understand is if you're pro-life, if you're like everybody has the right to live and everybody has the right to this life, which you think is a beautiful, wonderful life, would you not also agree that when life is no longer beautiful and wonderful and when it is too painful to live, that one of the pro-life options you should offer people is the ability to exit this life in peace and in harmony? And something else I don't understand is even if you think that counts as suicide, maybe you're Catholic and you think that counts as suicide and you think that makes you go to hell, you don't have to do it. Like it always shocks me when people vote against
What are the
laws.
movies? There was one movie, Logan's Run, and there was another movie, Soylent Green. And there's a handful of things where just you reach a certain age and the law requires that you go die now.
Yeah. That's not what it is. And people say, well, what's going to happen is people with disabled relatives they're tired of taking care of are going to go and they're going to get them euthanized. Absolutely not. You literally have to be examined and deemed mentally fit to make your own decisions, or at least have a medical power of attorney in order to even be offered this option. It's not just for everybody. But I have this theory that the reason that a lot of people oppose certain laws is because they think they have to do it. For example, I really think a lot of why a lot of and I can say this because I am one, why a lot of rednecks had a problem with gay marriage is because they thought that meant they had to get gay married. Like they thought they had to dissolve their marriage and get gay married. So of course they were panicking. They're like, I ain't gonna marry no man. Like that's gay, right? And I think they think if they approve things like gay marriage, like death with dignity, that means they now have to do it. They don't understand the ability to allow people to do things that they don't partake in. They don't have to get an abortion just because abortion is legal. Nobody's going to come into your house. It's not like that Monty Python scene where they come to get his liver and they just like cut him open on the table. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about from I think it was A Meaning of Life where they just take his liver out while he's still alive. Nobody's going to do that to
you
your baby.
donated your liver. We're here to collect.
Yeah.
I'm using it.
Yeah, exactly. Like nobody's going to come and take your baby. Nobody's going to be like, sorry, you voted for abortion. Bye. Like yeet, right? That they're not going to do that. You don't have to. You can allow people to experience things and take advantage of programs that have nothing to do with you. It's wild to me. It's
What
wild to me.
the thing that I'm recognizing about the religious conservatives, apart from the fact that, and I'm going to be very generalizing.
Okay.
Apart from the fact that I often see a level of maturity that is far beneath what should be the norm for full-grown adults.
Yes.
I see Christianity used as an excuse to get out of responsibility.
Yep.
For anything, because you don't have to actually help anybody. You just literally wish upon a star that they'll get the help that they need without you doing anything, because you're not going to do anything. You don't have to make anything better. You don't have to do atonement because, hey, your magic imaginary friend has forgiven you, right? So just and so it doesn't matter what we do to the environment, because Jesus is going to come back any minute now and save us from our own irresponsibility. All that nonsense. But then we also have the thing where they don't understand a problem if it's not their problem.
Right. Yes.
You can't understand what it's like to have a gay son until your son is gay. There's just you really couldn't figure out that other people live this life. Just because you don't live this life doesn't mean that other people don't live this life. And so suddenly you see all these Republican politicians, they change policies when they realize their son is gay. You couldn't put yourself in someone else's shoes?
Yeah.
Enough to realize that there are people like this?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that maybe you shouldn't be criminalizing people just because they're not like you?
Right. And they can certainly figure out how to terminate pregnancies in a very discreet way when they're trying to keep it out of the media. But when it's
let's
other
look at
people,
that for a moment.
Yeah.
Let's look at that for a moment.
Yeah.
Where is the morality in demanding that a preteen rape victim carry a fetus to term when the doctors have already detected that the fetus did not develop a brain? So there's no brain. This is a lethal birth defect. This is in no wise a person. It's a lump of meat that will die minutes after birth if it makes it that long. And so we're going to have a 10-year-old who's going to go through all of the terrible physical deformity of a pregnancy at an age where she's not physically ready to endure that. And women who are ready to endure that will still complain about what pregnancy did to their bodies. Now you're going to take somebody who's 4 to 8 years too young to endure this trauma at all, and you're going to force her to go through it for a fetus that cannot live.
Right.
Louis Gohmert who's a great example of the thoughtlessness of the GOP politics. Because you listen to this man talk, and you can tell he don't have a thought in his head. Go look up Louis Gohmert on YouTube. That's how he fucking talks. He demanded that this girl be forced by law to carry this terminal fetus to term, to suffer all the distortion that she didn't sign up for, couldn't have signed up for if she'd given consent, because she can't even give consent.
Right.
Not that she did give consent, not that she thought she gave consent. She wasn't in for it anyway.
Nope.
Why would you force her to go through this? Is it because you think the brainless lump of meat has more rights than she does?
Right.
But I understand why Louis Gohmert wants children to be forced to give birth to brainless babies. Because otherwise, who the fuck would vote for Louis Gohmert?
He needs supporters. He would not be here today if you were allowed to abort brainless lumps. But also,
he needs brainless lumps, are the only ones that'll vote for him.
Right. But you know what? At least the good thing is, at least people who are pro-life and anti-abortion take care of the people once they're born. They make sure they're fed. They make sure they're no, wait.
If you're really pro-life.
Wait. No, they don't. No, they don't. They're like the summary.
No, if you were really pro-life, you'd be exactly opposite of what the pro-life people are.
You would be a liberal progressive individual. If you were pro-life, you would be somebody like me, unfortunately, sitting in an apartment in Tennessee with too many parrots and an accidental haircut. That's where you would be. But I still think that's better than not being able to pick when I die.
I can understand accidentally falling into too many parrots.
Yes, it happens. It happens all the time.
But the accidental haircut, I don't come anywhere near scissors.
It was to be fair, it was a guard that fell off of a razor, and I ended up having to shave my entire head. The guard just fell off, and I took a chunk out, and then I was like, oh no, and then I tried to fix it, and it was worse, and so finally I just shaved the whole thing.
Yeah, my motto is that everybody's hair is 2 feet too short.
I am an example of somebody who probably should have been aborted because I am a brainless lump of cells taking up oxygen and space in Tennessee. I'm just saying. I can admit that about myself. It's okay. But instead, I'm here stealing oxygen from the rest of you. And
note that nothing I've said here advocating that people should have the right to die, and that people should have the right to decide whether they're going to have to go through a pregnancy. I'm advocating for human rights. I'm advocating for the quality of life.
Yes, that's
for moral reasons.
Yes. That's the most infuriating part. Is I'm like, no, we agree. People should be able to live a decent life. At a certain point, it's no longer decent. Being forced to give birth to children that your body can't cope with, or being forced to give birth to children who will suffer a great, long, sufferable life where they won't even be mentally cognitive for the majority of it to even know what's going on. That's not life. It's the definition of life, I think, that gets misconstrued here. And then you're really going to tell me that forcing old people to waste away in a bed where they can't even control when they soil themselves is life? I'm curious how they think they're getting into heaven by making that decision for strangers sooner than those of us who are like, I don't know, he seems like he's not feeling very good. Maybe we should let him make some decisions on his own.
My dad was just 5 years older than I am now.
Wow. That's so sad.
Just 5. And my grandfather, and my dad died at 66. I'm 61. My grandfather died at 66 as well. Both of them chain-smoking alcoholics. I am not like either of them. I mean, I will have. I'm currently drinking a very expensive, very fancy beer, but it's not like I don't drink like nobody in my family does.
Right.
It's a rare thing for me to get drunk, and if I get drunk, it's because I'm not paying attention, and if I do get drunk, it won't be for long. Because I tend to ride that out where I just like, okay, I'll be good to drive again in just a few minutes, because I can feel the buzz, cut it off, get straight again. Okay, I'm good. Whereas my family didn't seem to know how to do that. Oh, I've had too much. Keep going.
Yeah.
Seemed to be their motto for whatever reason. And I quit smoking many years ago. And I didn't smoke. I didn't start smoking in middle school like everybody else in my family did. So I didn't smoke. I didn't smoke for long, and I stopped smoking a long time ago, except for cigars. I will have an occasional cigar.
Yeah. But you don't even
When I
inhale
when
those all the way into your lungs, do you? Those are just
yeah, no, cigars can cause you cancer, like cigarettes can, but you have to. It has to be a habit.
right.
I think
Yeah.
it is so infrequent
It's
that I
really
have a
rare.
cigar. In order to, the difference between a cigar and a cigarette is you can have a cigarette doing almost anything, but when you have a cigar, for me at least, that means that I've got 30, 40 minutes where I don't have to do a damn thing. I've set aside time where I know I don't have to do anything for
Right.
30, 40 minutes, where I'm going to be sitting on the side of the beach, or there's a place. The last cigar I had, we went lakeside, and so we have this restaurant that hangs out over the side of the lake, and I think it was New Year's, and I had a cigar because I'm just waiting for the midnight hour, and I've got a good hour to go, and got a cigar, and I'm going to enjoy it. I had one. I was in Iceland, and I remember thinking about
Wow.
how everybody in my family had always told me. I had so much negative reinforcement growing up. People telling me that it don't matter what you ever do, you ain't never going to amount to nothing. You'll be the world's greatest ditch digger,
Crabs
but
in a bucket.
yeah, you're gonna never. It won't matter what you do. You'll never be any good, and nobody, nothing. This is the people in my own family
That's
telling me this.
sadly not surprising.
Yeah, you're just doomed to be a failure. This is what they're telling me as a child. I'm a child when they tell me this.
Yeah.
So here I am sitting here. This was just a couple of years ago. I was in a hot tub at 40 degrees Celsius in the Icelandic tundra, kicking back, smoking a Cuban cigar, and drinking Norwegian liquor while looking for the northern lights.
Like a no good oxygen thief.
And I'm thinking, I done better than every one of those assholes that told me I would never amount to anything.
Right. You're like, if this is amounting to nothing, I will continue to amount to nothing for as long as I possibly can. Right.
And you know what the funny thing is it wasn't just in those moments that you could necessarily brag about, but in every moment, I think I appreciated my life more than they did any moment of theirs.
Right.
Seriously.
Yeah. Yep.
Every moment. I have enjoyed the fuck out of my life.
Miserable people love miserable company. And if they can tell you think you're going to do things with your life, and if they're afraid you're going to think that you're better than them, they cannot have that. They must stop you. It's ridiculous.
Another example for the topic that we're discussing. One of my heroes, the rock gods, Lemmy Kilmister of Motorhead.
I thought you were going to say just The Rock. He's just one of your heroes.
A funny thing when I discovered Lemmy, somebody said, you look like you would really love Motorhead. But really, who's Motorhead? This was like 1982. Somebody introduces me to Motorhead. They show me a picture of the lead singer, Lemmy Kilmister. And by strange, stupid coincidence, in the picture that they showed me, he and I were dressed exactly the same.
Really?
The same belt, the same shirt, the same everything. I mean, we look the same sunglasses, everything. Like, I haven't even heard this guy's music yet, but I already like him.
That's hilarious. That's
so then, but the thing is that Lemmy really was a big damn deal. He was hugely respected. Back in the 80s, I felt like I was the only Motorhead fan. I loved Motorhead, and everybody else was listening to something else. But then, as time progresses, all the metal bands are all focusing on Lemmy. That Motorhead is the band that they all admire the most. So Lemmy discovers on the eve of his 70th birthday, and he's the most respected rock star. He doesn't recognize himself as heavy metal. He says we play both kinds of music, rock and roll. But he didn't consider himself heavy metal. Oddly enough, Ozzy doesn't either. Weirdly. But
Who do they consider heavy metal is my question.
rock and roll.
Okay.
They think they're rock and roll. Black Sabbath was originally billed as a blues band. And Motorhead was originally classified as speed metal, which makes sense because Lemmy's drug of choice was speed.
I was going to say, there's only one way to come to that conclusion.
Well, that's what the word Motorhead meant in England. In England back in the 70s, it meant that you were a speed freak, and Lemmy was all about speed. But anyway, the thing about Lemmy was they told him, we just found that you have cancer. And it doesn't matter what kind of cancer you have, because somehow it went undetected. We never, you've seen doctors all over the world, and somehow nobody picked this up. But when they finally discovered it, you have it everywhere. You have cancer all through your whole body. You have maximum 2 months to live, and there's nothing anybody can do about it. Lemmy's response was, now remember, this people are respect, right? Lemmy's response was, I've had a good run. You've had a good run?
That's
it? You did you're fucking Lemmy.
Right. I mean, yeah, I'm not going to argue you didn't have a good run, but also that's it. That's all.
Yeah. And then the dude says his last words was, I'm going to go take a nap.
See, that's the dream way to go. I think that's the dream. But I do have a solution that I think will really drive home the importance of death with dignity to these lawmakers who are voting against it. And everybody, stick with me. What we're going to do is we're going to wait every night until they are just about to go to bed because they're exhausted. And we're going to jump up either against their window. You can just attack them, whatever, and just say, no, you're not tired. Stay up. You need to stay awake. I don't care how exhausted you think you are. You need to stay awake. You're not tired. And just make them stay up. Just make them stay up. Every time they think they're tired, we get to tell them, no, we decide when you're tired. Morally, you're making the wrong decision by going to bed. You're exhausted. I don't care. Stay awake. And I think after 10 days, maybe 3 days, they'll probably give us whatever we want.
What's the longest you've gone without sleep?
I
love that you don't know.
I don't.
I respect that.
Listen,
you gotta think about that.
Listen, I have a past.
Yep, I can tell already.
Almost, I want to say almost 72 hours.
Ooh.
Could be 72, but I don't think so. I think it was almost 72.
I got you beat.
What are you at?
4 days.
Were substances involved?
No.
Has it? Oh, well, mine. Yeah, they were.
Yeah. So
I was tripping.
I was working a night shift. I had a 10 to 6 kind of gig, and I got tired of sleeping all day and missing out on life. I was young, good looking, fun loving, and I want to live. And I got tired of working all night, sleep all day, to just what are you going to have dinner and go back to work? So I decided that I would just skip sleep one day and
2 days.
Go down to school, or go to hang out with a bunch of people where my friends are, that kind of thing. Except that the next day, something came up, and I had to do it again. And then so that now that's important. So I've stayed up. I went to work all night, stayed up all day, had a good time, went to work all night. Now I've got to stay up all day to do this other thing. Now I got to go back to work. And then the next day, I don't remember what happened, but I don't remember a whole lot anyway. But I remember it was 4 days, day and night, 24 times 4. And I go back to work. And this is when I realized I am definitely going to go to sleep, because I'm already going to sleep while I'm standing here.
Right. Right.
I was pouring a pot of coffee. I fell asleep standing up, pouring a pot of coffee.
That's hilarious.
I was hallucinating. I was, yeah, I couldn't even tell where I was anymore, and I'm on the job alone, and it was.
So there was this one time, we're friends here. I could tell this story. I feel like there was this one time
Yeah, there's nobody
I
else watching, right?
there's nobody else. It's definitely not on the internet forever. There was this one time I fancied myself a marijuana baker, and I was like, you know what? I love dabs. I'm gonna make dab brownies. I'm gonna make like brownies that are the equivalent of one dab because I was 23 and it made sense. And so but I'm also bad at math. That's a very
Seriously, I
key.
was 23 in the story I just told.
Right. There's a
Go
pattern.
ahead.
There's a pattern. But I was also really bad at math, which is important. I ended up making brownies that were 10 dabs each. Didn't know that. Ate 3 of them and was so afraid to go to sleep because I was convinced because I was just so out of my brains that if I went to sleep, I would just die. And so I was like keeping myself up for I'm pretty sure it was 72 hours. There are gaps in time. But like my body kept trying to put me out because I was so anxious. It kept trying to get me to black out, but I would just wake back up. And 3 days later, I was a barista at the time. 3 days later, I decided to go to work because again, that seems to be a pattern as well. I'm at the coffee shop making a drink, and my brother came to pick something up from me, and he looks at my face and he's like, you good? And I was like, yeah, no, I'm cool, I'm fine. And he's like, oh, okay, I'll see you later. And then he texted me later that day and he's like, you looked really scared, are you okay? And I said, yeah, no, I'm fine. But I was scared, I was terrified. I had ridden my bike there and it had not worn off. But I made it through the whole day. And you're like, why am I surprised you got an accidental haircut? You probably shouldn't be anymore.
Yeah, I somebody asks, occasionally this thing comes up on Facebook, well, what is it that the older you get, you appreciate the less every year? And the older I get, the thing I appreciate less is who I was in my youth.
Yes.
I
Yes.
tell you sincerely, I was such an idiot.
Yes. Yes.
I was
God.
I was bordering on right wing.
Yes, same.
I was arrogant, self-centered, callous, I mean, and stupid.
Aron, when I was
And
20
and
years old, I called campus police on people who were smoking weed. I was that person. I did. I called Campo because I smelled weed. I would hate that bitch. That bitch and I would not get along. I rebuke her. That was if you knew me back then, hello, this is me. I'm a new person.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I am not. I'm glad that the people who knew me then are very forgiving people.
But I'm
That
also
they are
like
still my
I'm
that they
surprised
are
to learn
still
that
my
about
friends to
you.
this day. That's amazing. But
I'm
I mean, one of the really stupid things that I did, because you mentioned you mixing the number of dabs and not being able to count quite right.
right.
So I wasn't normally into drinking liquor. I mean,
Oh
it
no.
is true that I spent a lot of my 20s with a bottle of Captain Mo in my hand, and I would just be tugging straight from the bottle. But I never measured it because it's my bottle. So, and by Captain Mo, I mean Captain Morgan spiced rum. If that wasn't obvious, but there was a time I got a hold of somebody's access to somebody's liquor cabinet. I've got nothing better to do. Me, a friend, we're just going to sit around and drink. And I was trying to remember how much a shot is, and I'm so embarrassed at how stupid I was in my early 20s that I got the impression, just a brain fart. You get this weird association. So you have the glass that you would normally put the rocks, the mixed drink thing. I thought that was a shot glass.
No.
Yeah.
Aron.
Yeah.
How many did you have?
My friend and I each had 3 shots when
That's
we
like
ran out of
12 shots easily.
when
No,
we
that's
ran
more
out
than
of
that.
no,
That's
it was 6 shots
right.
per glass.
Oh no. See, I'm bad at math.
So I had
Yeah.
I had 18
Wow.
in a very short span of time.
Wow.
And I remember we had run out of whiskey because he and I we emptied the bottle between the two of us. And I'm like, well, damn it, I was just about ready to start drinking. but we ran out of whiskey. So I decided, frustrated, I'm just going to get up and go to bed. I stood up.
Not for long, you didn't. You didn't stay that way. Wow. Wow.
Yeah, because I was also, back when I was 23, I was a $105. Oh, yeah, I was a $160, something like that.
Wow.
Tall, scrawny, no body fat.
Wow.
Yeah. So I drank 18 shots in 30 minutes. And I remember crawling to the bathroom to turn myself inside out.
Okay, so I'll tell you this: the drunkest
We
I've
seem to
ever
have
been.
deviated from the topic,
We
but it's
have,
okay.
but this is an important story. So the drunkest I've ever been is up until lockdown. I worked at the Second City, the comedy club in Chicago, and I taught classes there. And one of the classes I taught there was stand up. And so there was one class that I'd had for 8 weeks that we just became really good friends. I usually didn't become friends with my classes, but this group, we just got really tight. We were really close. And so after they graduated and they weren't my students anymore, literally the night after their graduation showcase, they asked me to go out for drinks with them. And I was like, why not? I never do this. I'm a homebody. Sure. So I go out and I order I love Johnny Walker. And so I ordered a shot of Johnny Walker. I was like, I'm just going to have one and then we'd go home. And one of my students was like, what are you drinking? And I said, Johnny Walker. And she was like, oh, and she calls the bartender. She goes, one Johnny Walker over here. I thought she was going to join me. I thought she was ordering one for herself. And then she hands it to me. And I was like, oh, I have 2 shots of Johnny Walker. This is interesting. And so I turn around and one of my students is like, what are you drinking? And she says she's drinking Johnny Walker. And so he goes, oh, great. I'll take a Johnny Walker over here. And so I combine them in a glass together. And I'm like, I guess I'm just going to have a 2 shot. And then he hands me that shot of Johnny Walker. So I'm like, okay, that's cool. We got 3. 3 is my limit. I'm not going to do more than 3 tonight. And I bump into somebody. I turn around and it's a friend I haven't seen in like 5 years. And he's on a bad date, apparently. And he's like, what are you doing here? And I was like, what are you doing here? And he's hammered. And he goes, what are you drinking? And I said, Johnny Walker. And he goes, I'll take a double neat Johnny Walker over here. He gives me the Johnny Walker. I end up with 7 shots of Johnny Walker. I drank them all because I was broke, right? Like I was a broke millennial. Like, what am I going to do? Just like waste them. So I drank them all. And I had just gotten my dog like 2 weeks before. And so I took her outside and I was hanging onto one of those wrought iron fences step by step. And my dog stopped every 2 steps and just looked at me with the most shame I've ever seen. And she's like, I just came here from a shelter and you are worse than I am. Like I am literally, you're trash. Yeah. And so the next morning I just happened to have a Keurig machine by my bed and I just slammed a cup of coffee and it was okay. I never had a hangover, but, or maybe I still do. Maybe that explains a lot of my behavior since then. I've just an eternal hangover. But
in a little over a week from now, I will be on a cruise ship in the Caribbean. And I'm a featured speaker on the Free Thought Cruise. And I'm pretty sure that all of my my attempts at dieting, I did lose a fair amount of weight, but all that's just going to go through the window because they gave me unlimited food from the high dollar restaurants that are on this cruise ship. So I've got unlimited food and unlimited bar tab.
No.
Yeah.
Living your best life.
Yeah. So because it's the Caribbean and because if it's not, if it's not craft beer, specifically stouts, and they're not going to have stouts in the Caribbean, then it's going to be Captain Mo.
He's going to be steering the ship. He's going to be steering the cruise ship. I've got a question. Have you ever been banned from anywhere? I feel like you are somebody who would either have been banned from a lot of places or not banned from anywhere yet.
I've been kicked out of a bunch of houses.
I mean, did you have permission to be there?
Yeah, I was invited in. Yeah. I was invited in.
Like a vampire?
And then kicked out.
Yeah. Don't invite it in. If you invite Aron in.
Yeah. Oh no, you turned out to be way more than we expected. You can get the fuck
Yeah, they're
out.
like, whoa, this is not. Is it because like a debate starts and you get kicked out or something?
Well, in one instance, yeah, I remember again in my early 20s
That I
when
like
I
to
was
not remember those times.
yeah, when I was and most of it you don't. For those who have not reached a certain age yet, there is a point where you just don't remember your 20s at all.
No.
Kind of a fond general feeling maybe.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's it. But I remember being invited. There was times when I was like in between homes kind of thing because I was completely irresponsible and head up my own ass, arrogant. And so I would end up crashing on somebody's sofa, and then their parents or grandparents would show up. And I remember having a religious argument with somebody's grandparents.
Oh no.
Yeah.
But
And
that
being
sounds like they
told,
had it coming though. Old people
well, yeah,
always.
and being told immediately that you can't tell my grandparents that there's no God. You can't tell them all the shit that you said. That's disrespectful. I'm like, I'm sorry, I was being honest.
Right.
I think lying to people is disrespectful.
That's immoral. That's immoral, right? I mean, it's a
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
And you
And
got
the
kicked
funny
out?
thing is, I didn't know anything then.
Right.
It's funny when you're that young and you think you know shit. I would love to have a conversation with myself from back then.
God, I
I'd
wouldn't
beat
because
that
she thought
kid
she
up.
I was gonna say, that bitch thought she knew everything, and the worst part was that was when I was, like, in my debate prime, so I was like a nationally
Yeah.
ranked debater with the mentality of, like, a 19-year-old who thinks they know everything. That's the irritating part, is she would've argued with me, and I would've just had to punch her. I would've just had to knock her out. That's just the only way to get her to stop from talking. I don't know. Did you ever go through your, like, conservative Republican phase before you woke up?
Making quick judgments against other people without having any kind of no thought of being in their shoes or to their circumstances at all.
So you were a Christian too?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Well,
Baptist? Yeah.
my Christianity was a little bit different, and fortunately, my Christianity was very very short lived. I was a reborn Christian for a number of hours.
Oh,
Yeah.
was it those days
I,
that you were awake for, like, 4 days straight?
my best friend in high school became a later in life became a Southern Baptist minister and
Mm.
the principal of a Christian school who taught that the Bible is the only source of truth in our world. Let all else be a lie. So he would teach his students that the whole of reality is a lie, and only the book of lies is true. So
How is that not illegal?
he convinced me to accept the power of Jesus. And
Praise be.
I was into a lot of spiritualism when I was young. I would say when I'm in my 20s, I was still a kid. So I would say when I was a kid, and when I went through the ritual and accepted Jesus, I went wandering around, floating around the house in a state of kind of a blissful euphoria. And I remember having a moment of clarity, a presence of mind to ask my friend, how do I know that this feeling of elation is really the power of Jesus and not just like, no, self-imposed mind trick or something?
Asking questions like that is sinful, Aaron.
He grabbed me by both shoulders. I've told this story so many times. He grabbed me by both shoulders with a huge beaming smile and perfect teeth, said, just keep telling yourself it's Jesus until you believe it.
No.
Fake
No.
it till you make it. That was his philosophy.
That's wild, but not surprising. Not surprising either.
The admission of dishonesty in his religious belief broke the spell instantly.
Good.
Yeah, I went from reborn Christian to not a Christian at all instantaneously.
Yeah.
Now, it took a
Wow.
couple of days for me to realize that I didn't really believe in a God. And sadly, it took me 15 more years after that to realize that not believing in a God means atheist. Because
Yep.
I'd been lied to about what the word atheist meant.
Yeah. Yep. It's such a
Yeah.
trigger word for people, and they don't even really know what it means.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. It only took me one night to go from conservative Republican Christian to liberal atheist Democrat. I took shrooms, and then I just like literally, I just took shrooms, and I was never the same. You just can't unsee it. You know what I mean? Like once you see it, you just can't. Yeah, because like when you smoke weed, for the people in the audience, maybe you're straight laced. When you smoke weed and you ask yourself questions and you write them down, the next day you're like, these are the dumbest fucking questions I've ever heard in my life. When you trip on shrooms, they're still really good questions the next day, and you can't unask those.
Somebody in the chat said that Aron was the basis for Brad Pitt's character Floyd on True Romance. This is going to be hard for your viewers to believe, looking at this visage as it currently exists. But I have pictures from me from decades ago where I really look like Brad Pitt.
Really?
Yep.
Like current Brad Pitt or like also past Brad Pitt?
Also past Brad Pitt.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I
had a pretty good time
Yeah.
going in and out of college parties.
I bet. Where'd you go?
College parties.
Just any of them? Just any of
Any.
them? Yeah, just wherever there's a party, I'm there. See,
Yep.
that's my problem is I did not go to college parties because I was an uppity bitch. Nowadays, I would love to have gone, but at the time I literally remember saying like, I have important things to do, like homework. You should think about that too.
Yeah, I have a problem relating to characters in the wrong way. Ashton Kutcher played a couple of characters that I related to way too strongly, but also wrongly for the wrong
Oh.
reasons. Yes, I looked like him back then, but unfortunately, I also talked like his character did.
Oh. Like in that 70s show?
Not that one.
Okay.
But let me put it to you this way, and this is a story. I'm glad my wife isn't here to hear the story again because she's heard it so many times. But I was raised in Los Angeles in the 1970s, really? So like I remember when we moved out of LA, it was like when the whiskey had just opened up, and I remember when Mammoth was playing because Mammoth was that's Van Halen, right?
Yeah.
And so I moved to Texas. And I was listening to an interview with David Lee Roth of Van Halen, and I'm thinking when I listen to this interview, I'm like, dude, I sound exactly like that guy. And then I realized I live in Texas, and I sound like that guy, and that didn't match. So I started working on toning back the LA metalhead guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, the two guys who get in the phone booth and go through time.
Cheech and Chong.
No. Although I often say that I grew up in a Cheech and Chong movie because that makes sense.
Yeah.
Where I lived in Los Angeles really did look like a lot of Cheech and Chong movies. What was the?
Oh, phone booth. Oh, Bill and Ted.
Bill and Ted's excellent. Yes, I was so there, man. Right there with those guys. Yeah, I related a little bit too much.
That's really funny.
Those guys. Yes.
If you could,
So
would you go?
I was way too California for Texas, if you know what I mean.
Yes, especially now. I feel like Texas hates the word California now. They hate the people from California. So does Tennessee. That's like anytime anything goes wrong in Tennessee, they're like, those Californians. Like we were iced in last week and we couldn't leave, and people were like, Californians coming in and doing all this shit. But
it's a funny thing that it's not just different places that you go to that have accents, it's different times that have accents. Because David Lee Roth, the interview that I was listening to, was a generation before Bill and Ted. So Bill and Ted is effectively the same accent, but 10 years later.
Interesting.
And so it is noticeably different.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, you're right. And I feel like, especially in the South too, I feel like you can tell an old country accent versus a modern country accent. There's definitely a difference there, especially regionally for sure.
Yep.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. And my husband's from Illinois, so he has like one of those Illinois accents. So everywhere he goes, Tennessee people are like, "Are you one of those Californians? Like, you don't sound like you're from here." Yeah, they everybody's asking like, "Where are you from? Where are you from?" He's like, "Just from Chicago, Chicago." Um,
Yeah, I can recognize the Chicago accent pretty
a
easily.
Chicago
I don't
accent.
I don't know how you how you confuse that with California.
You want a hot dog? Yeah, eggs. Everybody says eggs. Yeah, I don't understand,
Yep.
but well, sir, I don't mean to keep your entire evening from you, but if you had like a message for people to leave with tonight in terms of what we were talking about, in terms of something totally different that's on your mind that you think is important, something you might be talking about in the near future, what would you say if you wanted them to take away anything other than the fact that shrooms makes you an atheist?
I remember I was 26 years old when I saw a report on TV that your brain isn't fully developed until you're 26. And I remember thinking, that explains a lot.
That makes so much sense. So, it makes so why are we letting people do so many things after the age of 18 when they really shouldn't until they're 27? They really shouldn't.
You can't make rational decisions, dude.
I am the poster child of you should not be allowed to do anything before 27. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I am finding that I can advocate for old people a lot more effective. You know, everybody wants to, won't somebody think of the children, and we're all worried about the children. I've always felt more empathy. I mean, even as a young man, I felt more empathy for old people.
Yeah.
Because they were at this point where they were able to do stuff and live a certain way, and now increasingly they cannot. And there's also a cognitive decline where people they start getting targeted by shysters and frauds and emotionally manipulated, and I see that happening throughout my family.
Mhm.
And I just feel so sorry for these people for the way I now intercept all of my mother's mail,
That's probably for the
and
best, honestly. Yeah.
all of it is trying to scare my aged little mother into giving them her money to save them from the radical leftists.
That want nothing but free abortions and to just kill themselves all the time.
Yeah. And then the thing that they advocate when they say that, that the Democrats are coming for your Social Security, and I have to tell my mom, I'm like, can you show me one Democrat that ever said anything about coming after your Social? Because I've got a list. I can show you video from 6 different Republicans making public statements on video to the effect that they're coming, all from the last 4 years, that they are coming after your Social Security. Show me one Democrat from the last 20 years who said something similar. Oh, you can't find one? But you're going to believe all the people who lied to you, aren't you?
It's because the Democrats don't want you to find it, Aaron. They control Google, just like, I don't know,
Yeah.
Jewish people. They also control Google. Nobody wants you to find the truth. I read that. Dave Ramsey told me, or somebody like
It's
that.
like these people. I feel so sorry for them. It's like they only want to believe lies. If it's true, they don't want to know anything about it.
Yep.
If it's something we can verify on Google in a moment, they don't care. They want the stuff that you can only find out from certain sources and can't be verified by any other source. That's what they're going to believe wholeheartedly.
Yes. Yes.
When I asked my mother, when she's watching some kind of news show from where I don't know, but she's watching some kind of news show that says that everyone in Hollywood effectively is a cannibalistic, devil worshipping pedophile. Everyone, all
of them. Yep.
and they're
That
all
tracks.
radical leftists, because you can't be a leftist without being radical.
Right.
And anything that isn't fascist is radical leftist, because you can't be far right enough. I mean, if you're not far right, if you're a centrist, well, then you're radical leftist. You're all the way on the other side, because everything's got to be black or white.
Yep.
So I asked her, you don't really think that Tom Hanks drinks raped baby's blood while he's worshiping the devil, do you? And her answer was, you can't prove that he doesn't. What do you do with that?
But I gotta say, at least it's a consistent belief system. You know what I mean? Like, you get that exact same thing from people who believe the Bible. At least it's consistent. It's out of there. It's out of this world, but it's consistent, and I appreciate consistency. I
My
have
mother's in
respect.
an old folks. My mother's in an old folks home right now, and she wants me to help her go get registered to vote again because she absolutely has to go negate my vote in the next election. And it doesn't matter how much I tell her. If you vote Republican, you're voting for evil, just straight up.
Right.
You're voting to have your Social Security taken away.
You're voting against your
You're
own
voting
best
for.
interests.
Yeah, you remember that incredible health care plan that Trump promised that never materialized, that nobody even tried to figure out?
Yep.
You remember the wall that Mexico was supposed to pay for that never happened? You remember the caravan of shoeless migrants that were supposed to come over and, I don't know, kill everyone once they limped across the border? What happened to them?
Bidenomics happened to them, Aron. That's what happened. That's why we can't finish the wall, Aron. Have some respect. It's like you don't read or something.
So somebody's complaining to me yesterday that Biden lied. Really? Can you? There's nothing you can you show me something Biden lied? I got 37,000 lies I can show you that Trump lied about.
Right,
Can you show me anything Biden lied about? Well, he
Yeah.
took money from China. No, in fact, he didn't. But you know who did?
My favorite thing is when people say, well, what's Kamala even doing? You don't ever see her. You never see Kamala. And I'm like, imagine being so used to, what a cutie, being so used to your vice president making such a total ass out of themselves on television every single week that you think it's a problem that you haven't seen the vice president on television in a few weeks. Like, I would much rather not know where she's at, to be honest with you, than know exactly where she's at and that she's saying ignorant shit all the time. Maybe that's just me.
How would the right wing respond if Joe Biden told a mob of people to hang Kamala?
Right. Like,
we just pretend that Trump had nothing to do with that. We pretend that those people weren't Trump supporters. We just pretend that was Antifa.
That was Antifa. Antifa shaved head, Aron. Antifa stormed the government. Antifa
with
eats
Dixie
the last
flags.
Yes, Antifa eats the last ice cream sandwich in our freezer every time. Every time there's a box. They are hellraisers. They are terrorists, and I wish you would take them seriously. But
yeah.
Does anybody have any questions they want to put in the chat by chance? Well, there were a couple.
It's funny how you talk about when back when you were 23. What was that, Thursday?
Thank you. No, that was almost 10 years ago. Almost 10 years ago. Yeah. I just turned 32 in November. But I just drink a lot of water and wear SPF, everybody.
Well, I can vaguely remember being 32.
Yes. I can feel it in my knees. I can feel it in my joints. That's how I remember.
Okay.
Somebody said I accidentally answered my electric razor instead of my phone. Yeah, no, absolutely. That tracks. I believe that.
That explains the haircut.
That does.
Hello?
Yeah, it really does. Yep. Absolutely. Well, Aron Ra, I really appreciate your time and your conversation. It's always a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us today for this live stream. If anybody has any thoughts or comments or questions, please feel free to leave those in the chat. Even if you're watching this after the live stream has ended, we're always curious to hear what you think. And please follow the links that I put in the chat as well. That'll give you a lot of information on death with dignity, the common misconceptions, the true answers. I put both Canadian and American information in there for people who are watching from wherever. But other than that, Aron, any final thoughts, any parting words?
No, I am going to be talking about a similar subject, and I wish that there was some way that I could make this funny, and I just don't know how I can,
Right.
because it's such a serious matter. The only part that's funny, and it's going to be dark humor, is when I talk about why I no longer support the death penalty where I used to.
Why is that?
You'll have to wait till I give the speech.
Leaving us on a cliffhanger. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. It has been a pleasure for the last like 5 or 6 hours I've been talking to all of you, but I'm going to end the stream. Good night.